Time for business news now. Matthew Warren has joined us on set. Matthew, the arguments over the future of French steel-making plant Florange rumble on.
Yes, that's right. This, of course, we're talking about ArcelorMittal here, and a deal was done last week to save over 600 jobs at that steel plant that you mentioned. But unions not happy. They're now saying the devil in the detail, and they're not pleased with what they're seeing. They're saying there's nothing really new. Well, they met the French Prime Minister on Wednesday to air those grievances.
A cast iron promise or just hot air? More than 600 jobs saved at this steel plant in northeastern France. That at least is what the government says is the result of the deal it struck with the owner, ArcelorMittal.
The priority that the president set was to avoid mass layoffs at Florange. That is the situation we have achieved.
The devil, though, is in the detail. The plan on the table sees ArcelorMittal sink 180 million more euros into the plant to keep it running. But of that, all but 50 million was already earmarked for maintenance costs and would have been spent anyway, leaving the unions somewhat underwhelmed.
They offered us 180 million, 3/4 of that as maintenance. They're taking the mickey, it's obvious.
He heard us, but he didn't listen.
I told him I had the feeling that we've been betrayed. He said he could understand that, but it wasn't the case.
Strong words then, and a clear sense of disappointment. Plant workers are furious at what they see as a double game from ArcelorMittal. The blast furnaces will remain open until next spring, but there are few guarantees beyond that. And while there won't be any mass layoffs, ArcelorMittal will be transferring jobs from a plant it is closing on the other side of the country. The government has already brushed aside calls for a nationalisation deemed too expensive. Now it has high hopes that a reconversion to a new greener production technique could provide the site with a brighter future.
What's the word from the markets this Thursday, Matthew?
Markets a bit mixed so far this Thursday, Cyril. Now, they'll be looking later today at what happens with the European Central Bank. Will they change their interest rates? They're expected to hold them. Meanwhile, that's the picture in Asia. All the markets up except the Shanghai down slightly. And on Wall Street on Wednesday, it was a similar picture. The Dow was up, but the Nasdaq down by about 0.77%.
And Apple shares pulling down the Nasdaq there.
Yes, now Apple shares make up a huge part of the Nasdaq, such a big company, and those shares were down over 6% on Wednesday. And in fact, as you can see from this, they're down since their peak of $700. No one big issue there, but a company facing much tougher competition for its iPhones and its iPads.
All right, staying in America, there's still no end in sight on talks over trying to overcome, or rather avoid, the fiscal cliff.
The fiscal cliff, exactly, of these tax rises and spending cuts that could kick in January. Well, there was progress of sorts on Wednesday when President Obama spoke to the leader of the Republicans in the House of Representatives. It was only a telephone call, though. Perhaps they'll meet face-to-face soon, who knows. Meanwhile, some tough words from the Treasury Secretary, Timothy Geithner, in an interview with CNBC. He said that there's no prospect of an agreement unless, and this is what the Democrats are asking for, taxes go up for the top 2% of the wealthiest Americans. That's what they want to see.
And here in Europe, there's some more bad news for Greece. They've been downgraded yet again.
Yes, just when you thought there wasn't much further to go, they have been downgraded from their CCC rating by Standard & Poor's to what's known as selective default. Now, this Standard & Poor's says is a temporary measure while Greece is doing this bond buyback that it's engaging in order to get its next tranche of funds. And they say that they will put it back up to CCC if that goes well.
You know, there's an argument that we've kept hearing about that austerity is actually bad for the economy, including the Greek economy. And there's a leading economist who has added his voice to that argument.
Yes, now this is Nouriel Roubini. He's sometimes been called Dr. Doom. That was his nickname because he was one of the economists who predicted this whole financial crisis that we're facing. Well, he was talking in Germany on Wednesday, and it's on the same day that the UK and Ireland presented new austerity budgets. Well, as you just said there, Cyril, he was saying that austerity is not the right way to go and could even be counterproductive. Let's take a listen.
So what I fear today about the Eurozone is that they don't put job creation and demand and GDP growth at the center of the policy debate. If I had to propose policies that change it and restore growth, I would say we have to postpone the fiscal austerity in the periphery and do it more gradual, slower rather than faster.
And there's been a shakeup at Europe's biggest aerospace and defense company, EADS.
Yes, now this company has been complaining for quite a while about too much interference from French and German governments. They say that that was one of the reasons this planned deal with BAE Systems, the British defence company, fell apart in October. Well, on Wednesday, the company managed to agree a new share structure that sees the shares of both those countries going down.
The EADS chief executive calls it the most important change since the creation of the company 12 years ago. The Airbus maker is restructuring its ownership to allow it to operate independently of government interference. The shareholding shake-up comes in the wake of the European aerospace giant's failed $45 billion merger with Britain's BAE Systems, which would have created a company with a market value close to that of arch-rival Boeing. The merger was scuttled by intergovernmental squabbling. As part of the restructuring, the French state will reduce its holding from 15 to 12%, and Spain will reduce its share from 5.5% to around 4%. However, Germany will come in with direct state ownership for the first time, matching France with a 12% stake. But no government will have veto powers over management decisions, and none will have the ability to appoint board members. Up to now, German interests in EADS have been entirely in the hands of automotive group Daimler. Daimler will now reduce its stake in the company, as will the other major private shareholder, French defence and media group Lagardère. Daimler says the deal will allow EADS more entrepreneurial freedom.
Another story Matthew's following for us this morning is that of photo application Instagram. They're having a bit of a conflict with Twitter. The users are facing problems linking to the social network Twitter.
That's right. Now, there are many people who like to use Instagram, this photo app, and use those photos, put those photos directly onto Twitter, the micro-blogging site. But the company for Instagram has now turned off that feature, which allows them to link directly. Instead, they are directing them to their own website. Now, this is seen as a way for Instagram to reap the benefits of the 100 million users that they have directly, rather than letting them do it on Facebook. That means they can perhaps on Twitter, rather running their own advertising and things like that. So we'll see how that works out for those users.
And this very last story sounds like a strange one. A new high-rise building in Chile has been called too capitalist.
Yes, a building that's too capitalist. Now, this is the Great Santiago Tower. It's 300 meters tall, and it's in Chile and located in the financial center. Now, for many Chileans, it's seen as a sign of progress, but there are those who say that it's also an overblown symbol of capitalism, and they point to inequalities in Chile, and they don't like it being there.
Matthew Warren with the Business News. Thank you very much. World News is up in 2 minutes.